Ellarigum Vanakkam. Before I start my address, I think it is fitting that we have an offering to our ancestors. The salutation to the sacrifices and enduring spirit of Hindu ancestors. We offer our deepest pranam to the illustrious Hindu forebears, rishis, munis, siddhas, acharyas, gurus, sadhus, sons, warriors, leaders, farmers, businessmen, artisans, kings, queens, men, women, and children, who through centuries of unremitting foreign incursions stood as steadfast and unyielding sentinels of Dharma. With unwavering courage, they embraced sacrifice and martyrdom, confronted death with divine resolve, and rose in valiant defense of our civilization, culture, and people in the darkest epochs of our history. It is through their indomitable spirit, steadfast devotion, and supreme sacrifices that the eternal flame of Hindu Dharma was kept alive, so that we, their descendants, may walk today with dignity, identity, pride, and purpose. With hearts full of reverence and gratitude, we bow before them in eternal remembrance. Today is also the first anniversary of the passing on of Sri Vivek Debroy, one of India's greatest scholars and writers. We also have lost two great writers in the recent past, Sri S.L. Bhairappa, who was one of the greatest novelists that India produced, and Sri Gajanan Mehendale, who was the last of the great historians who only believed in primary sources of anything. I request the audience to rise and hold 1 minute of silence in memory of our ancestors as a tarpana to Sri Vivek Debroy, to Sri S.L. Bhairappa, and to Sri Gajanan Rao Mehendale. Please have a seat. So I'm back, Kovai, for the fourth time as the curator of Western Ghats Literature Festival. Ellarigum Vanakkam. Kovaiku vande oru varde sollanam, inge manasum manasarum rendu perum romba alagana irukku. I hope that wasn't bad Tamil. It was possible, right? Even my accent is not too bad, I think. It gives me great pleasure to stand here in front of you as a curator of the Western Ghats Literature Festival. The Western Ghats Literature Festival began as a small spark, a thought in the minds of the Varandah Club team that words still matter in a world drowning in noise. And what better place to host it than beautiful Kovai? A city that quietly builds more than it boasts, where entrepreneurship meets empathy and literature still smells faintly of filter coffee and rain on red soil. The city of Coimbatore is one of my favorite cities in Tamil Nadu. I keep coming here every year, whether Coimbatore wants it or not, but I love coming back here. The city of Coimbatore has always turned ideas into action, from its industrial prowess to its institutions and entrepreneurial energy. Kovai doesn't speak loudly, it doesn't shout, it builds quietly and then lets the work speak. That is the philosophy of the Western Ghats Literature Festival as well. We would like our sessions to speak, we would like our speakers to speak, we would like you to go back with the memory of some scintillating conversations. This year, in the 4th edition of the Lit Fest, we have 2 packed days. We have 15 book launches. Last year, we had 16 book launches. This is one literature festival that is actually about literature, and that is one thing that we are very, very proud of. We have panels that cover temple management, temple architecture, to technology, We have panels that cover ecology to economy, from defense to dialogue. We have got some of the great defense speakers here, and you will hear them over the next 2 days. And we have a dedicated volunteer team that treats every author and every guest like family. When we dreamt up of the Western Ghats Literature Festival, we wanted more than just another annual event. We wanted a movement. We wanted a meeting of minds, a movement where authors and readers, researchers and rasikas, publishers and patrons gather together and ask, what stories will shape the next century for Bharat? None of this would have been possible without our patrons and sponsors. They didn't just write checks, they enabled conversations. And because of their generosity, we could invite so many great thinkers and writers to Coimbatore. Were there challenges? Of course there were. No event of this size can be organized without any challenges. It is not easy to organize an event like this without any government support, without any institutional support, or even big corporate funding. But Kovai smiled with generosity, and everything fell in place. Because when this city loves an idea, it adopts it like its own, like it has adopted Western Ghats Literature Festival as its own. So for the next 2 days, relax, enjoy the conversations, ask a lot of questions, mingle with the speakers, celebrate Bharat in all her glory. And tomorrow evening, when you walk out of these doors, remember, festivals end, conversations don't. We have proven that a lit fest can be rooted yet rational, erudite yet emotional, cultured yet contemporary, memorable yet modern. Our mission from here? To make Kovai not just the cotton capital, but the consciousness capital of Bharat's literary map. We may never be the biggest literature festival of Bharat. We don't have the money for that. But we certainly aim to be the best, and we will be the best. We will return next year, louder in laughter, deeper in dialogue, and prouder in purpose. Until then, keep reading, keep questioning, and above all, keep the flame of Dharma and dialogue alive. Today, for the first time in 4 years, we have posted a QR code there, and I have to say this because there is no shame in saying that. If you would like to help us organize a function that's even better next year, please check the QR code that is stuck on the walls behind, and if you'd like to help, we would welcome all the help. Nandri, Romba Nandri.
Thank you, Shefali ji, for setting the context and the tone for the Literature Fest. Moving on to the next event for the day. Few voices carry the resonance of our Itihasa Purana like Sri Dushyant Sridhar. Through the eternal echo of epics, he takes us beyond chronology into the living wisdom of stories that have shaped our civilization. Itihasa is not just about the past, it is the ever-present guidance of truth in time. Let us listen with reverence to the echoes of Itihasa that still guide Bharat's heart. I welcome Sri Dushyant Sridhar.
सान्द्रानन्दावबोधात्मकमनुपमितं कालदेशावदिभ्यां निर्मुक्तं नित्यमुक्तं निगमशतसहस्रेण निर्भास्यमानम् अस्पष्टं दृष्टमात्रे पुनः उरुपुरुषार्थात्मकं ब्रह्मतत्त्वं तत्तावद्भाति साक्षात् गुरुपवनपुरे हन्तभाग्यं जनानाम्. Namaskars to all the Astikas who have gathered for this Lit Fest. It's been like 2 literary festivals of this genre that I've missed. And I'm very happy to be back. Indebted to the organizers for inviting me amidst such a galaxy of writers, thinkers, and scholars. The word Varandah Club itself is quite unique. I'm sure when we had houses that were actually grounded, we had the luxury of having a place outside the house where people could gather and speak. But veranda, when it, instead of getting elongated towards the front and goes in the middle as a longitudinal portion, it's called as Dehali in Sanskritam. And in Tamil Nadu, in the 6th century, you had 3 great thinkers called the Poigayalvar, Budattalvar and Peyalvar, who are said to have gathered in one such way, ale, and was born the Nalayira Divya Prabandham, the compendium of the 4,000 verses. So, Veranda is just not a place where people take their filter coffee and chat. It can also give rise to a Prabandham as rich as this. So, Varandah Club has been there and done that. I was wondering, looking at the name of the Western Ghats Literary Festival, where do you bring literature into the Ghat section? Right, you rightfully have elephants going through the Ghats. Where is literature? I was wondering. But then the topic came to me as from the epics. Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmayet Bibheti Alpashrutat Vedat Mamayam Pracharishyati is the shloka. Itihasa Puranabhyam. So the solution has to come from the Itihasas. It happens so in the Kishkindha Kandam, because I come from the land of Karnataka where Kishkindha literally is. And Sugriva had to keep his promise up. There was a MOU signed between Sugriva and Rama. Both of them had lost their wives. And Hanuman and Lakshmana facilitated the both of them coming together. Though none of them aspired for a Nobel Prize, both of them still came together and nobody broke this ceasefire between the both. So, when each of them promised, there's a shloka, Sita Kapindraha Kshanada Charanam Rajiva Hemojjvala Nopamani Sugriva Ramav Pranayav Prasange Vamani Netrani Samam Sphuranti, says Valmiki. So the pact was, I will help fetch your kingdom, Kishkindha, back to you and your wife Ruma. In return, I am hopeful that you will help in the process of searching Sita. And Sugriva said, well done, I promise. Rama immediately sincerely helped that process where he said, go summon your older brother for the duel. And Kamban, the Tamil poet, says, Edutturappi vanduvor eduttiye radarpanan nadithalangal kottivai madittadutturangu tol urangu valithin sevi tulekkane. And he summons Vali, and Sugriva have a very bloody duel. If you go to the 9th century temple of Bantai Sre, which is in the outskirts of Siam Reap in Cambodia, you see a beautiful depiction of Sugriva and Vali fight. So, but Rama couldn't help that day. And Sugriva was badly bruised and he came home and he said, Rama, I trusted in you and I went to see what has happened. And then that is when Rama says, you both look alike. So it would have been a grave mistake to have shot, and if I had shot at you, it would have been a bigger apachara because you have sought asylum in me and it is wrong to have killed a person who has sought asylum. Then there is a beautiful garland of Gajapushpi which is garlanded around Sugriva after they attend to Saptajana Ashrama, Saptapsaras, and then the battle continues, the duel continues, and finally the arrow is shot at Vali, and Vali has a volley of questions to throw. You can talk like T. Rajendra at times. Vali has a volley of questions to throw at Rama, and Rama patiently listens. Even before Stephen Covey said, listen first to understand and then be understood, Rama listened. He didn't need Stephen to actually teach him how to listen. So Rama listened very patiently, and then he answers every question with such clarity. Done. Then comes the period of the rainy months, Shravana, Bhadrapada, then Ashvayuja, and then Kartika. He says that the Vanaras who are under my control can't go. They catch sinus very fast. So they can't search for Sita during these rainy months. Hold your reins and let's wait for some time. They wait for some time. Sugriva hasn't replied. Then Rama gets really angry, perturbed. He sends his brother Lakshmana to go summon Sugriva. Why there has been such a delay? That time, Sugriva says, Lakshmana says, Goganaha, Brahmanagnaha. So he gives on the list of sins that have atonement, that have prayashchittam. And towards the end he says, there is no prayashchittam if a person has promised something and then doesn't deliver on it. So I'm sure he would have had the election manifestos in his mind. Because you promise so many crores of jobs and you know very well that it won't happen, but still you promise. So Lakshmana was a forethinker. He did say that. Then Sugriva comes. Tara gets out of the inner apartment. He was completely lost in those pleasures. Sa praskhalantim madavihvalakshim pralamba kanchi guna hemasutram salakshana lakshmana sannidhanam jagamatara namitangayashtihi. She has a staggering walk and then she comes in the forwards and she asks Lakshmana, Kim kopa moolam manujendra putra, how dare you get angry, Lakshmana? Lakshmana said, see, it's a promise you have made. You should be asking a question to yourself. And finally Sugriva was told by Hanuman, go freshen up and then help Rama. Now Sugriva lays a beautiful atlas in front of him. He says these Vanaras will go in the east, these Vanaras will go in the north, some in the west, some in the south. So he completes, he asks his father-in-law, Sushena, see, he has married Tara. So Tara's father now becomes his father-in-law. So Sushena is sent in one direction, Shatabali is sent in one direction, Vinata is sent in one direction, and towards the south, the youth India, Angada is made the chief. Then he has to say from where he has to search. He begins from Narmada, Krishnavena, Mahanadi, Vardha. Varada is Vardha, the river in Maharashtra. Then he continues to Mahishaka. Mahishaka is the Mysore Prantiya. Then Andhra, Chola, Kerala. Then he speaks about the Western Ghats. That is where he says, in the Western Ghats, you will be coming across elephants. See, it's there. Then he has to talk about the literary festival. The elephant has come. Where he will talk about the literary festival, that is where he says, there is a peak that receives the rays of the sun, Aditya Sankasham, where Agastya sits. So Agastya Maharishi sits there. When Agastya is there, there is knowledge. How do we associate with the culture of this bhumi? See, it's a very tricky thing. In the Uttarakanda, it is said that Hanuman was born to Anjana Devi, to Kesari, and in a cave, and then he was tutored under Surya. That is when there is a word called Vyakarana. There is no mention of Navavyakarana. 9, we generally say he's a Navavyakarana Pandita, right? There is no mention of Nava there. There is a mention of Vyakarana. To which the commentator asks, what Vyakarana? Because it could have not been Paniniya Vyakarana. Panini just had come 2500 years back. So he says, Aindram. This is the name of the grammar which is mentioned. So Aindram is the Vyakarana that Hanuman has mastered under Surya. How is that connected to this land? Immediately somebody will take a portion. Tamil Bhumiyil Parpaniyattai Tinithu Vittar Ivar. ஏன் சம்ஸ்கிருதத்தில் தான் கூற வேண்டுமா தமிழில் கூறக்கூடாதா? But I am very hopeful that they get the pronunciation of Tamil right. So Tamil Kura Kudada, this is where Tolkappiyam says, see, we believe that Agastya crossed the mountain ranges of Vindhya. Agastya, Aga, he has crossed the mountain ranges and then he came from Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu and was going between this geography. He is said to have had a disciple, a Sishya called Tolkappiyan. Tolkappiyan, the student of Agastya, was the one who used to note the minutes of the meeting in the literary summits of Pandya Desha. Because before Madurai, the erstwhile capital of the Pandyas was called Kavatam. In our Tamil Grantham, we call it as Kapatapuri. And in the Ramayana, Sugriva says, go search for Sita in the Kavata of Pandyas. Pandyanam Kavatam, he says. Then he also says that this city has been guarded by the snakes. That is why in Tamil we call it Alavai. Madurai, Alavai means where the mouth of the snake touches its tail. So it's called Bhogavati. That time he says, Pandyanam Kavatam. So this Agastya used to attend to those Sangam literary summits, like literary festival. We used to have literary festivals in the Madurai region. And Agastya was a part and parcel of it. He used to lead it. The minutes of that meeting used to be noted down by his student called Tolkappiyan. And Tolkappiyan came up with a work called Tolkappiyam. In Tolkappiyam, it is said, Aindiram Arinda Tolkappiyan, the one who knew Aindram. So Hanuman knew the Samskrita Vyakarana called Aindram. The one who wrote the Tamil work knew the Samskrita Vyakarana called Aindram. So Agastya, Tolkappiyan and Hanuman are interconnected. That Agastya was the leader of the literary fest. He wanted to shift it from Madurai to the Western Ghats, and then came the Western Ghats Literary Festival. Right? So that said, the opening verse of this talk was the first verse in the compendium of 1034 verses, which is the quintessence of the Bhagavata Purana called Narayaniyam. Barely 2 hours from here, or 2.5 hours from here, is a beautiful kshetra of Krishna called as Sri Guruvayur. Guruvayur lies in the Western Sea. So Krishna stands there as the personification of unadulterated and blemishless beauty. When Krishna stands in the Western Sea as such a piece of beauty, one Tamil poet wrote, Arabic kadaloram oru alagai kandene. He is alagu, right? So he is by the Arabian Sea. So this is the opening verse where Bhattathiri, the prolific writer, speaker, and of course a grammarian of the Kerala land, Sangama Grama school says, Purusharthatmakam Brahma Tattvam. I understand Purushartha through this Bhagavan. So Purushartha is extremely important in Sanatana Dharma, and that is the eternal echo of our scriptures. If you go through our scriptures, if you go through Srimad Ramayanam, Sri Mahabharatam and the Puranas, one thing that you will see is Purushartha, the ultimate goal of a human life. Of course, they are 4 in number. Anything in Sanatana Dharma has to be multiple. So you have 4. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Aram, Porul, Inbam, Veedu. Thiruvalluvar in Tirukkural beautifully exemplifies this by distributing all his kurals, his couplets in 3 categories. Arathupal, Porutpal, Kamathupal. Dharma, Artha, Kama. Dharmam is extremely a nuanced subject. It seems as if it is very approachable, very meaningful, very understandable, but it is very nuanced. That is why in the 124 questions posed by Yaksha to Yudhishthira to drink 100 ml of water. See, this man was thirsty. So he ordained his younger brother to go fetch water. It was such a simple human Homo sapien process. The brother went, he didn't return. So did the other brothers. Finally, leaving Draupadi alone, Yudhishthira goes to see 4 bodies lying on the ground. He knew something went wrong. He goes, takes the water for himself. That is when an ethereal voice says that you will have to answer questions to drink this water. And it is not 1 or 2, it is 124 questions. To drink 100 ml of water, I would have rather died thirsty. So, this man answers 124 questions. In that there is a question, what is dharma? That is where he says, tarko apratishtaha shrutayo vibhinnaha. There he says, dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhaya mahajano yena gatassa panthaha. He says, dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. It is very, very tough to actually ascertain this is dharma. Because it depends on the way you interpret. You have such great advocates like MRV here. It's all about interpretation, right? How do you interpret? So how do we interpret? Certain areas are very clear. You have the Matra Dharma of advising the son right. Sumitra does that. Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi, Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam, Ayodhya Matavim Vidhi, Gachatata Yatha Sukham. The boy comes and asks, Mother, my older brother Rama has been asked to go to the forest for 14 years. I thought it is my duty to go and serve him. What is your opinion on this? Sumitra says, you have committed a grave mistake. Lakshmana said, what mistake have I committed, mother? You should have left by now. Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam. He is your father. You're no more D Lakshmana. You are R Lakshmana. From now on, you're Rama's son. Sita is your mother. Where you go and where you live shall be Ayodhya to you. Gachatata yatha sukham. My dear son, I advise you go. Pinnum pagarval magane ivan pinchal tambiyennum padiyendru adiyarin yeval seidi mannum nagarke avan vandidilva andrel munnam mudiyana palmulai soranindral, says Kamban. They left. So she followed the dharma of a mother advising the son. I'm sure we have to contrast this with something, right? In 1990s also, while I was growing up as a student, we used to have a lot of power cuts. My family members were the most selfless people on earth. When the power would go off, they would surely ask me to check if the power was off in the neighboring house as well. So we were good people from the bottomest of our hearts, however bottom we could get. So she says, you leave. What does Lakshmana do? Lakshmana has the dharma of a sesha, of a person who serves. So he said, I will leave. So it was such a simple process. But now there is, when we read through these dharma aspects, that is why I said it's nuanced. As you read such straightforward, very neat dharma aspects, there will be some nuanced portions. That is where you have this concept called dharma sankatam. Generally, we use this word in a different context. Dharma sankatam is not about choosing dharma over adharma. We use it in that context, that there is adharma, this is dharma. So then there is dharma sankatam. Dharma sankatam is when there are two dharmas and which dharma to choose. See, if you take up Lakshmana, he had a dharma of being the husband to Urmila. That was also his dharma, pati dharma. But he chose the dharma of serving his elder brother over being the dharma of being a husband to Urmila. Because this is a question, an eternal, I don't know whether it's an echo, but at least it's a question. People come and ask, what do you think about Urmila? She recently fought an election in Bombay. So, what do you think about Urmila? You know, see, it's all about the poise and the pauses that you take to make you sound intellectual, right? It's all about, what do you think about Urmila? What do I think about Urmila? Urmila had no worries. See that Lakshmana has left. So she was okay with him following his Sesha Dharma. But there are eternal questions that come in Dharma Sankata itself. For example, when Dasharatha has said, Sumantra, come here, make arrangements for the Yuvaraja Pattabhishekam of Rama. Bharata was not there. Any sensible father would say, send a message to Bharata Let him join us in this joyous occasion. Let him be a part and parcel of Rama's Pattabhishekam. You know what he says? Kintu chittam manushyanam anityam iti me matam. Sumantra, humans are very fickle-minded. So we will do it in the absence of Bharata. Why? Because in the 105th Sarga of Ayodhya Kandam, Rama reveals that Dasharatha had promised Kaikeyi's mother that the son born to Kaikeyi will be the Yuvaraja of Ayodhya. So he has made a promise. That's why he said it's an election manifesto. When you know this will never happen, yet you make a fool. Now Dasharatha has promised, so it has become dharma to follow that. But then now he says, no, the eldest son as per Article 54F and 94B. The oldest son has to become, then why did you make that promise? This is where dharma sankatam lies. There is a promise made earlier. There is a dharma as a Raja that he has to do. Which one to follow? That is dharma sankatam. Between two dharmas, what you choose. A woman needs to be respected. Manu keeps on telling this. Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tasya devataha. Then why did Rama kill Tataka? Why did he have to humiliate Shurpanaka? All these are questions not asked of the festivals now. It has been asked in the commentaries itself. But there is an answer given. This is where it gets very nuanced. So to see dharma and dharma sankata. So, but dharma has to lead you somewhere. Where will it lead? For example, Jatayu. Jatayu was a scavenger. Akshunya yoga patham agrahyatam Jatayum tiryanchameva bhavatam, says the Acharya Kuresha. So, Jatayu had no qualification to even institute a Brahma Vidya. But he gets, Rama says, I grant you moksham. I grant you moksham. So what made Jatayu get that moksham? So one Purushartha leads you to the other. He followed the dharma of being a true devotee and a person who has truly served Rama, and that gave him the other Purushartha called moksha. Not everybody who did this first Purushartha had the entitlement to get the last Purushartha. Dasharatha was the father of Rama. We never ever say Dasharatha moksham. He must have been reborn somewhere, or he must have got some place where Rambha, Urvashi, Tilotama dance. But we don't call it moksham because it is not essential that one dharma leads you to the, one Purushartha leads you to the other. Whereas in certain cases, it does lead. Now coming to the concept of artha. Because we often see the only Purushartha as moksha and the other three Purusharthas is inferior. Not essentially. In Sanatana Dharma, all four Purusharthas have their place. And it is very important in what limit they are. When in fact Lakshmana goes taking the message of Rama to Sugriva, he says, Sugriva, you were expected to follow Dharma, Artha, Kama. You were supposed to engage in Dharma in the mornings. In the afternoons, you were supposed to be engrossed in methods to accumulate Artha. In the evenings, you were supposed to engage in Kama. But all through the day, you are engaged in Kama. This is where it goes wrong, he says. So there is, see, when I speak about this morning, afternoon and evening, there is a prahelika in Sanskritam. Pratardyutah prasangena madhyahne stri prasangatah ratrau chaurya prasangena kalo gacchati dhimatam. Intelligent people spend their ways this way. What is that way? Pratardyutah prasangena. In the morning you gamble. Madhyahne stri prasangatah. You speak about women and exclusively about women in the afternoon. Ratrau chaurya prasangena. You speak about theft in the evening. And intelligent people spend their way. But this is a prahelika. It's a riddle. So how do we answer? Pratardyuta prasangena. Read the Mahabharata, of which gambling is an essential part in the morning. Madhyahne stri prasangataha. Speak and read about Ramayana that talks about Sita in the afternoon. Ratrau Chaurya Prasangena, Navanita Chauryam of Krishna and the Dashamaskanda of Bhagavatam is extremely important. Read Bhagavata in the evening. So you have a timetable scheduled for morning, afternoon, evening. Lakshmana says you have Dharma, Artha, Kama, but you have engaged in Kama. So it is essential for us to understand that there is not one Purushartha that is the best and the remaining three are inferior. They also need to be followed. So there is a Dharma, Artha. That is why, kings in the past used to do Rajasuya Yajna. See, Rajasuya Yajna was not meant to realize moksham. It was meant to accumulate wealth in a different way. That is why in the Uttarakanda of Ramayana, when Rama says that I need to do Rajasuya Yajna, Bharata consults. He says, Rama, please don't engage in Rajasuya Yajna because you will end up having many enemies. Rather do an Ashwamedha Yajna. And that is how Ashwamedha comes into picture. So there is a Dharma, Artha, Kama. This is another part, poor that Maharishi called Vatsyayana wrote Kama Sutras. He had a lot of things, such nice things to say. But today when we propagate his Kama Sutra, it is all in a way that we want it to be. But if you read the original book, it has so many nicer, finer aspects of life. So Kama is an equally important thing because it's always an assumption. He is a sannyasi, so he will get moksham or he has the ability to grant moksham. We are all grihasthas. We are all wearing a panchakacham of some brand. And so we are not entitled for moksham. Not essentially. In Sanatana Dharma, sannyasi, the meaning of a sannyasi is not only the person who wears kashayam. Samyak nyasaha sannyasaha, the one who surrenders the burden of protecting his jivatma to paramatma is, so you can carry a Louis Vuitton, not hide it. You can still carry it and then be a sannyasi. So Kama is also an integral part of this Sanatana Dharma. So of this Purushartha. So you have Dharma, Artha, Kama. The most important of all, Moksha. How do we understand Moksha the way it has been seen? For that we need to go level by level. One. To say that one needs moksham or one is granted moksham, one desires moksham, we need to understand what moksha is and why should one desire. So the presumption made for moksha is that this life is a cyclic process. Now how do we prove it's cyclic? Because when you step beyond a certain comfort level of audience and speaking, you will be bombarded with questions. How will you prove after life and before life? It's very tough. Then you'll have to say, read Brian Weiss's Many Life, Many Masters, read all that. So, how do we prove? This is where there is a method called Charuvaka Samayam. Charuvak. Charu means people who speak. Vak. Very well. So, the Nastikas of those days were called well-spoken. Nastikas, atheists, were called Charuvaks, well-spoken. Because the way they speak will convince you also to be an atheist. See, the way they'll say, I've been telling you for long. It's all about that energy. Because the moment you give name Narayana, that means you're becoming very mundane. You have to call it energy, momentum, velocity, mass. You'll have to be in that level to actually gauge this. So first they will try to tell this is an energy. Then beyond that energy, they'll say there's no form. All this will come. All this has been tackled by our acharyas in a way. How a child drinks milk from his mother the moment, because we are trained for everything. But when a little child drinks mother, the first milk from the mother, the child isn't trained. You don't train the child, keep your mouth here, So the child is so used to drinking milk for so many janmas, our acharyas say, that the child doesn't need training. So this is the first proof that the life is cyclic and not linear. So there are various aspects to which Charuvaka Samayam is handled, because I have to speak about how to handle Charuvakas in the state of Tamil Nadu. Primarily. Because how do you explain the concept of atheism now? Because today often people say, oh, there were atheists even during Ramayana. I beg to disagree. The atheists during the Ramayana, because they often quote Jabali, the atheists of those times were extremely conversant with the Vedas. They had to read the Brihaspati Sutras to even refute that there is no God. So, to compare a Jabali with all these people who rise up to the occasion and say something on the mic is not even a right comparison. Now, let's keep that aside. How to handle the Charuvakas? Because Charuvakas say there is life, but there is no concept of Atma. There is no concept of Atma within the Panchabhautika Sharira. There is no concept that this Atma leaves this Sharira and goes to another body. So they believe that don't believe in the cyclic nature of life. This has been handled very well by various acharyas. There is a Sarvadarshana Sangraha by Sayana Madhava. There is a Paramatha Bhanga by Vedanta Deshika. How they have handled. And even Rama refutes it. When Jabali speaks all this, because why does Jabali speak first of all in the Ramayana? Bharata is bent upon that Rama has to reach Ayodhya. He says, you don't have to listen to my father's words and mother's words, you return to Ayodhya. And that is where he says, don't make me a pariveta. Can anyone tell me what is a pariveta? Just guess. Who is pariveta? Atta we know. Who is pariveta? See, in Dharma Shastras, it is believed that if there are two brothers and the younger brother gets married before the first brother and starts performing Agnihotra, he incurs the sin of being a pariveta because he has not waited for his older brother to marry. So in the Ramayana, Bharata says, don't make me a pariveta. But this is not apt because both were married. Then what did he mean? Because a king, by becoming the king, becomes the husband to Bhumi. So he becomes Bhupala. So you're married the moment you become a Raja. So if Bharata becomes a king before Rama does, that way he will become a Pariveta. That is when he says, Rama, you have to reach Ayodhya. But Rama says, no, I've made a promise. It's been reported to the media that I'll be there in the forest for 14 years. How do I go back? That is when Jabali comes into picture. He says, Rama, what is this Pitrivakya Paripalanam? What is this Idli Kadai? Why do you have to listen to your father? What is this all about? Father has gone. Do you know his Atma has left the body? How have you seen the Atma go? Do you think if you believe that you can offer pindams here and your father will get his hunger done, satiated, then for a person who's traveling, see, that's the belief. Look at the way he says. He says, for your forefathers, you offer pindam. What is your belief? That all their hunger will go away by me offering pindams in Papanayakan Palayam or whichever place you want. I will offer pindams here. Somewhere it will get, wherever that Atma is in, whether it's in Syria, Ukraine border, wherever it will get quenched. In that case, Jabali says, then for a person who's traveling, you can eat. See, somebody has left for the airport and they forgot to carry their food. Oh, they'll be hungry now and you eat. Then it should happen. Jabali says this in Ayodhya Kandam. Rama listens to all this patiently. That's Rama's, Krishna would have just killed him that moment. Rama patiently listens. Then he says, Jabali, I have an opinion. Can I state? Jabali said, of course. You have the freedom to express. Say. I thought my father was blemishless in his administration. He has committed a grave mistake. Jabali asked, what mistake did your father commit to have you as a minister? A Nastika should never be a minister, he says. What do we do? So, when we have the entire cabinet. Now, so the basis of moksha is to understand that Atma is different from Shariram. Atma is eternal, Shariram is Anityam. The Atma leaves the Anitya material Panchabhautika Sharira to go to another body, and this process continues. So there is a cyclic nature. Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani, Jathare Shayanam. It's a cyclic process. So ultimately in one Janma, this Jivatma will realize, oh, this is a cyclic nature. I need to exit this vicious circle. This thought that I have to exit this vicious circle will lead him to the reading of the scriptures. The reading of the scriptures will lead him up to various instances where people have desired for this and obtained it. That concept where you want to exit the vicious circle and get out of it and then seek salvation is called moksham. That moksha becomes the fourth purushartha. Now, how do we realize this Purushartha, which is the eternal echo of the scriptures? That is when the Upanishads come into picture. Because there has to be, see, it's all about the way you acquire that knowledge and how you tune your mind. How do we tune our minds? That is when the reading of the scriptures and thereby realizing what is there in the scriptures becomes very important. That jnana becomes very important. That is where the concept of Brahma Vidya comes. That Brahma Vidya is 32 in number. This is how Vyasa has detailed it in the essence of the Upanishads. So you have 32 Brahma Vidyas. One such Brahma Vidya is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is also called sadhana. How do I understand Bhakti Yoga in detail? Read chapters 7 to 12, which is a part of the Bhagavad Gita, because those 6 chapters talk about Bhakti Yoga. In that there is a 9th chapter called Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya, the secret of all Vidyas. That is again Bhakti Yoga. So this Bhakti Yoga is what will lead you. Now, after understanding the details of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Arjuna is a bit lost because his simple question was whether to fight or not. See, he had a question whether should I fight or not. Krishna, you seem to be, though we are of the same age, you're wise, you're wiser, you seem more intelligent, you know how things happen. So you advise me. Krishna should have just shown his eyes that looked like 1,000 smelting suns blazing together and said fight. Or he should have said fight. He went on detailing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Arjuna forgot what he asked. It was a simple question whether I have to fight or not. And this man is going on and on about Bhakti Yoga. Finally he said, Krishna, fine, I will fight. So because he was worried if this man will continue beyond 700 verses. Because as such it is 18 chapters. So that is when Krishna finally says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshamicha. Now when he says Sarva dharman parityajya, abandon all dharmas. Now that's how English interpretation, our Grokacharya. He is also in the 4th Purushartha. It's Grok 4, right? Then there is another thing. You can ask, he's a Sadacharya. Ask perplexity. The other one is Gemini. So you ask all these acharyas, they will translate. As of now, they are translating, but let's see if some acharya drishti falls on them and they give the right interpretation. Sarva dharman parityaja, abandon all dharmas. If Krishna has explained with such attention and care for 1.5 hours, why will he say abandon all dharmas? So abandon all dharmas is not the way it needs to be interpreted. There he says, I have explained Bhakti Yoga to you. Forget that Bhakti Yoga for some time, and to accomplish that Bhakti Yoga, surrender. Mamekam sharanam vraja. So, we began with the process of understanding the Sthala Mahatmyam, this Kshetra. Then we went on to understand how Varandah Club is associated with Dehali and how Western Ghats Literary Festival finds an indirect mention in the Ramayana because you had the presence of Agastya in it. Then we went on to understand our scriptures. Then we need to understand the echo of our scriptures. What do they want to repeatedly say? That repeated saying is that of Purushartha. In the Purusharthas, we went through Dharma, Artha, Kama and finally Moksha. And Moksha led us to Upanishads, Brahma Vidya and Bhagavad Gita. And the last of all, what is eternal? See, this concept of Sanatana Dharma, the word eternal which is associated with Sanatana, itself is very intriguing. Because when we believe that creation began with Swayambhuva, Manu and Shatarupa, that means we are fixing a date. Then how do we say Sanatana? This is where the concept of karma comes into picture. When we used to learn Shastras, there used to be a pertinent question. We say if we are suffering now. You're all seated for the lecture, right? So, then what we often ask this question to the other person, assuming the neighboring person is wiser. You ask him or her, why are we suffering? The answer given is karma. Because of our karma, we are suffering. Then there will be another question. I'm sure you would have come across this question. then what about the first Janma where that karma began? Have you heard of this question somewhere? How do we answer this? So we had this question. Because somewhere it has to start. So there will be a first Janma. That time, did we have an already deposited karma in our account? Or how do we answer this? That is why our Acharya state, it is anadi karma. There is no beginning. Then again it has a logical fallacy there. You have to say there is a beginning. This is where the answer is very intuitively given. It doesn't mean that it didn't have a start. It means that you are not aware of its start. There would have been a start. I don't know the start. Similarly, when we deal with this concept of Sanatana, we interpret it as eternal. But what we need to intelligently say is, there could have been a start, but I am not aware of that start. Until I'm aware of that start, it will remain eternal. So this eternal echo of our scriptures simply talks about the Purusharthas, and that is the basic purpose of our scriptures. Last of all, when we deal with our scriptures, I've repeated this in many of my lectures. Pujya Sri Dayananda Saraswati used to state, how will a Hindu welcome his friends of other religion to his scriptures? He would say, welcome to my library. Because we don't have one book. We have plenty of books. The good thing about plenty of books is it offers you a variety. The difficult part of plenty is you have to read all of them. See, it's a tough thing. And the numbers just keep increasing. Vishnu Purana, 6,000 verses. Go to Bhagavata, 18,000. Ramayana, 24,000. Sapada Laksha Grantham, along with Harivamsha, it is said it crosses over 1 lakh for Mahabharata. Put all this together, it will lead you to 2 lakhs. Then you've got 18 Puranas. Barring these two, you will have the 16 other Puranas. It will lead you to 4 lakh verses. And all this is under the assumption that Vivek Debroy would have translated all of them. Right? Because so the thing is, how do we read so many books? This is where the shloka that I cited at the start comes to our rescue. Itihasa Puranabhyam. Itihasas dominate or have better prominence than Puranas. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are essential for us to understand. There will be another question. Sir, these are all stories. Rama went in search of his wife. His wife was abducted. He should have been careful. His wife was abducted. See, Krishna had so many wives, none of them were abducted. No, that's another argument that's given, right? So, he had so many, none of them were abducted. Here, Rama had one that was abducted. So, this will come in support of a lot of politicians who will say, see, that's why we told. One wife means they'll get abducted. So, the problem is, when we understand the scriptures as just detailing somebody's life, we have lost the plot. Ramayana is not about one brother being asked to go to the forest for 14 years and then he goes, Sita is lost. It has a beautiful undercurrent of a philosophy in it. You will have to carefully unwrap the beautiful history presented to us to see the philosophy. The moment you start seeing that skeleton of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, your understanding of the Vedas and Upanishads becomes extremely easy. That is why the shloka says, Vedas and Upanishads were worried, it seems. They were worried. What if somebody of Sanatana Dharma reads us first, without reading the Itihasas and Puranas, he will misinterpret and misunderstand us. So the right way to touching the core of Sanatana Dharma, which is the Vedas and Upanishads, is to understand the scriptures, mainly the Itihasas, so very well. So, Itihasas and Puranas are just not stories. Those scriptures become the eternal part of our understanding of the core concept of the Vedas and Upanishads. That is why every language made sure that Ramayana and Mahabharata was presented to them. You had a Kamban and Arunachala Kavi who presented Ramayanam in Tamil. You had Tunjattu Ramanuja Eluttachan who presented Ramayanam in Malayalam. You had Mulla, Ranganatha and Tyagaraja and great acharyas who presented that in Telugu. You had Kumara Valmiki in Kannada. Every language, you will have a Bhanu Bhakta Acharya in Nepali. You will have a Jagan Mohana in Odia. Why? Because only when you understand the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, understanding the core of the Vedas and Upanishads becomes very, very easy. I can go on and on about the eternal echo of our scriptures. You will see a plethora of great writers, a lot of them whom I respect, know. They will be talking to you. There are plenty of book launches, and I'm so happy to see very, very young school-going students who are a part of this lecture. Trust me, the other sessions will be interesting. So, this city of Coimbatore has been such a welcoming city to me as an Astika. Right since 2011, this is 2025, for 15 years, I would have rendered at least 300 plus discourses in 40 to 45 temples, sabhas, venues. So, literally somebody has to construct another temple. I wish they don't. Let's maintain the existing ones. That itself is a big problem. So let's maintain the existing ones. So this city has been so welcoming. And hailing from Bangalore, I don't sweat. So that's another way that it reminds me of my hometown. Very welcoming people, as Shefali ji said. It's such a city that welcomes people with such love. And I'm delighted to be a part of this literature festival. And I would like to thank Jagannathan for being the one who will always ensure that there's communication in the right way. Thank you so much. And generally, such addresses don't have a Q&A session, but if, now it has become a part and parcel of every lecture, because we'll have to keep telling the world that this Dharma encourages questioning. Right? So your head will remain with the torso. So feel free to ask a question, but we'll just have one question and I will wrap because I have 5 minutes. So we can take a question. Please make your questions short. And also remember, if I do not know the answer, I'll say I don't know. So don't expect that you will have an answer to your question. Please feel free to ask. Is there someone? Yeah. Is there a mic, or she can come forward if we can save time? Yeah.
Hariom sir, it's such a bliss to attend this, first of all. Thank you so much. And I beg my pardon for my ignorance to ask this question. While talking, you mentioned that Rama told that I grant you moksha. Generally, it is said that Rama never claimed that I am Daivam. Krishna always said. So, how he can say that, can a human grant moksha? That's my question.
Okay. So, I'll just make this question, I'll repeat this question. When we believe that Rama Avataram is a Manushya Avataram, and Rama in over 6 places has claimed in the Ramayana from Balakandam to Uttarakandam, Atmanam Manusham Manye Ramam Dasharathatmajam. I am a simple human being like you all, 2 hands, 1 face, 2 eyes, 2 ears. I'm just a human being. So he keeps telling I'm a human. So her question was, pertinent question was, if that be so, if he has stated that he's a human can't grant moksham. You see so many roadkills in the highways of the US. You see an antelope dying. Oh antelope, I grant you moksham. Gachalokan anuttaman. The antelope will give a nasty stare at us and will ask, will you go? To even grant me, will you go? So her question was, if Rama says he's a human being, how can he see? All that he can do is, he can embrace Jatayu and kiss Jatayu and say you're very nice and all of that. I'm indebted to you. I'm grateful to you. Why did he have to grant moksham? How could he grant moksham? But he says, Gachalokan anuttaman. See, it is true that Rama claims in many places that he's a human being, and Krishna didn't have that worry at all. He lifted the mountain, he danced on a snake, he had 4 hands after Kamsa's. So he kept on telling that I am Vasudeva Sarvamiti. So the question doesn't come with Krishna, it comes only with Rama. But this has been answered in a beautiful work called Atimanushastavam. Atimanusha Sheelavrittaveshaihi, Atimrittamara Vikramah Pratapaihi, Atilanghita Sarvaloka Samyam Varaye Vaishnava Vaibhavavataram. There are various instances through others' testimonials we know that Rama has been proven divine, or through Rama's acts. 1. In Balakandam, when Rama is at the age of around 12, Vishwamitra barges in and says that I need Rama. Dasharatha asks, for what? Why do you need my son? He says, no, I've got some demons to fight, Rakshasas to fight, so send your son. That is when Dasharatha says, Unashodasha Varsho, Me Ramaha, Rajiva Lochanaha. My son is not even 16 years of age. See, you don't even see a mustache on his face. He's such a Palvadiyum Mugam. He will wake up in the morning, and even before the lotus closes itself after the rays of the sun are shut, he will sleep. So why do you call him? That is when Vishwamitra says, Aham vedmi mahatmanam ramam satya parakramam kakapaksha dharam veeram jeshtham me datumarhasi. I know about him. Aham vedmi. This I know. See, the way you stress is what matters, right? See, even in our family, when we keep telling something and somebody isn't ready to believe, we finally say, I know. Which means there is a lot of proof that goes behind I say I know. So he says, send your son. I know who he is. Aham vedmi. For this word called Aham vedmi, I know who your son is, a book was written by one Shastri in 1940. That book has 140 reasons why he said I know. Okay, so there is a testimonial coming from a Brahma Rishi called Vishwamitra, who has been the mantra drashta for Gayatri mantra, which is of Savitri, a Surya's descendant, to tell that I know. So an external testimonial has come. It's no regular passerby. It is a Brahma Rishi who has worked very hard to get that title, who says I know. Now let's come to the Aranyakandam. When Rama walks into the forest, the rishis do sharanagati, prapatti to him. That time, Rama says, see, why do you tell all your problems to me? I am myself, have been asked to go to the forest. I am walking into the forest. You go complain to the king. Nagarastho vanastho va tvamno raja janeshwaraha. It doesn't matter whether you are seated on the throne or not, Rama, because you are our king. So the kingship aspired by all the rishis of Dandakaranyam is to state the divinity in Rama. Now comes Jatayu Moksha. On one hand, Rama has been crying, Sita! See, eternal echo, right? Sita! 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 So it echoes. So there's an echo. On the other hand, he says Jatayu Moksham. That is why the Acharya asks, the one who grants Moksham will know where Sita is. The one who doesn't know where Sita is cannot grant moksham. You have to be Sarvajna or Sarvavyapi to grant moksham. You can grant moksham, but you don't know the coordinates of Sita's kidnapping incident. That raises a question, right? The answer given is, Paramatma, out of his immense Shakti, Jnanabala, Aishwarya Virya, Shakti Tejas, Shadgunya Paripurna, thought, I will remain a human amongst humans, by the people, of the people, for the people. He thought, but how much ever you try controlling the supreme power, in some corner there will be a small hole that will break open. That moment of Rama to have quietly gotten rid of that shield of humanness comes in Jatayu Moksha. So for that moment, he said, Gacha Lokan Anuttaman. Jatayu got moksham. Lakshmana quietly said, Bhaiya, wrong dialogue. This is not supposedly, if you tell this man will talk about this in the Western Ghats festival. So Rama thought, see, generally the assumption made in religious lectures is, as people listen, they forget. It's like engineering semester. Like you keep reading, you forget. And So that's the assumption. But I'm sure we have such beautiful Astikas in Coimbatore who remembered what I said and asked how Rama granted moksham. So the secret is, at one point, Rama just broke open and he granted moksham, assuming that this would have not been detailed in our scriptures. But that one line of Valmiki was enough for Govindaraja in Bhushana, of Maheshwara Tirtha in Tattva-deepika, of Shivasahaya in Shironmani, of Nagesha Bhatta in Tilaka, of Trayambaka Makhin in Dharmakutam. All of them have written pages for that one line. Gachalokan Anuttaman. That's all. Pages and pages were written. And Tyagaraja said, Mrigamadalama Shubha Nitila Vara Jatayu Moksha Phalada Pavamana. In Kanakana Ruchira, he says, like how you granted moksham to Jatayu. So, that Astika's question, how could Rama as a human grant moksham, is extremely valid. The answer is by mistake, by slip, by slop of the tongue. You know what is slop of the tongue? Slip of the tongue. Rama granted moksham. He didn't realize it will become such a big issue. So that is to prove that he is divine. Yeah. With this, I stop my Kavitarkika Simhaya Kalyana Gunashalini Srimate Venkateshaya Vedanta Gurave Namaha. Namaskar.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to Sri Dushyant Sridharji for his illuminating keynote address that wove together the echoes of our Itihasas, the spirit of the Western Ghats, and the eternal rhythm of the four Purusharthas with profound grace and clarity. We request Srimati Swati Rohit ji to please felicitate Sri Dushyant Sridharji. We have a very carefully curated memento in the form of the Shivaji Maharaj sword signed with Tulja. Also want to take this opportunity to request all our participants, audience here, to please keep your mobile phones on silent. We are amidst very, very interesting discussions, and you would like to keep it silent and aware and attentive. Yes. We now move into an invigorating panel discussion. The sages of India taught that self-knowledge and world knowledge arise together. This conversation explores how understanding oneself is indeed inseparable from understanding one's duty, history, and even adversaries. A rich tapestry of intellect and insight awaits us in this next panel. I now invite Srimati Sumedha Varma Ojha ji, Shri Pankaj Saxena ji, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji. This panel will be moderated by Srimati Sai Swarupa Iyer ji. The topic for this panel will be Swayam Bodh, Shatru Bodh, knowing the self and knowing others. kindly request everybody to be seated for the next session.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Matre Namaha. So that was a wonderful, wonderful explanation of Purusharthas, very erudite as well as effortless by Dushyantji. Because we are now going to focus on a very, very important Purushartha and a very important aspect of that Purushartha, Artha. You know, Artha is one of the most important Purusharthas because in Purusha, Artha, there is Artha, right? We never called it Purusha Dharma, Purusha Moksha. We say Artha, the reason why humanity, what humanity pursues, right, is Artha. And in today's connotation, especially as the macro forces, the macro political, macro economic, macro social forces come together or converge and diverge in various factors. Those who we thought will be our friends did not remain our friends. Those who we thought may not be our friends may come to our help, or at the time of need we may be alone, and surprisingly we are good enough alone. That's what India proved during Operation Sindoor. We are also looking forward for the various addresses by people from the military on the topic. But now we'll be discussing with the erudite scholars beside me, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji, who has reinvented the pedagogy right from the Arsha Sampradaya. Pankaj Saxena ji, the author of Swayam Bodha Shatru Bodha, the title of our panel discussion today, to be self-aware. Only when we are aware of our own selves, we'll be aware of how to deal with the enemy. And who is that enemy? Right? Who is the enemy and who are we? Right? That is the question that needs a continuous review. And Dr. Sumedha ji, who is scholar par excellence about the Maurya period of the history in Niti Shastra, Artha Shastra traditions, and you just keep speaking to her about Artha Shastra and the time just passes. So without much ado, let us jump into the discussion. So I open up for the opening remarks. So we are told that India is a very nice and friendly country which has never conquered anybody. Ajatashatru, Dharma Raja, Rama, nice people. We never bear shatrutva to anybody, which is true in some connotation, but were we always this goody, nice, people? Did we never have a shatru bodha? Were we never protected against the enemies? Did our ancestors not have that knowledge to protect ourselves? So, I think.
Is it on? Am I audible? Yes. Namaskar to everyone. It's a pleasure being here as part of this panel with this wonderful erudite audience. Can you hear at the back? Can you hear at the back? Yes, you can.
Maybe volume?
Okay. So it's very difficult to follow the class act of Dushyant Sridharji, but we shall try to maintain your interest. So I think Swayam Bodh and Shatru Bodh can be considered from many points of view. I am going to look at it from the point of view of Niti Shastra, of Artha Shastra, and I would like to say we have that famous promise of Sri Krishna in the Gita, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. So whenever Dharma is going to through any crisis or problem, we have to fight for it. Vinashaya cha dushkatam. We have to finish off the people who are adharmic. So I don't agree at all that we were the proponents of ahimsa or not fighting, no yuddha, etc. Look at all our devis and devtas. All of them have ayudh.
All of them are fighters. And Sri Ram is not some goody-goody, smiling and quiet person. He is the Yodha par excellence. Look at the Vibhuti Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Ram is exemplified as the best Dhanurdhar. And all the excellent things in the world are being described in the Vibhuti Yoga chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So you see, Dhanurdhari was an excellent thing. Now, if I come to Niti Shastra, then the ideas of Shatru, that is, it's called Ari, are very, very clearly defined. There is a nation. That nation has to save itself. And what is the dhuri of that nation? The pivot, that is Dharma. So whenever Dharma is in danger, we have always fought. For that, we have had war, weapons, manuals for strategy. We have had from the Dhanurved to the Agni Puran to the Arthashastra. So we had the psychology of knowing our Shatrus, the reasons for when a fight was necessary, and the tools with which to fight. I'm sure we'll discuss all this later.
So looking forward, now Pankaj Saxena ji.
Yeah, thank you, Sumita ji, and namaskar to everyone. I think this, when we became aware of this battlefield when social media came on, even the Hindu side, the so-called Hindu side, was very fond of saying that, we have never invaded anyone in the last 1,000 years or so. I mean, if that is true, that's your fault. Do not let your fault be your virtue signaling. We should have, if that was not the case, but we did. Because until it was the British era which made us forget who we truly are. I am currently studying the Northeast, and until 19th century, Hindu saints, Hindu swamis are very, very powerfully going to some of those communities which we had never reached before, and taking Vedic Sanatan Dharma to them, teaching them the best qualities of this marga. And apart from that, how did the Bali Hindus come to be? How did the Hindu temples get created in Vietnam, for example? One of the most ancient Hindu temples on the UNESCO World Heritage List are in Vietnam, also in Mysore. So how did we reach there? All of this never happened. We did invade. Of course, we had ethics. Of course, we had rules. Of course, we had a way in which we fought. We were better than others. But that did not mean that we did not have any sense of Shatru. Like when I wrote this book and they say your title itself is very wrong, And why I say so, these are very, very well-known objections. So one of them wrote to me, it's not in our DNA, even if your argument is right. Because they cannot argue with the arguments that are given there, the reasons that are given there, and they say it's not in our DNA. So first of all, I say this manner of speaking, it's not in our DNA. This is a cultural thing. You don't need DNA to change for it. You can learn it in a lifetime. You can learn it in a matter of few years. You don't need DNA to change it. And if you're talking about that, then you have to excise Gita and all of it, like she said. Then you have to forget all our gods and all our deities, all our Puranas, all Itihasas, even Vedas, even in Upanishads, you will find some references where there is ayodhya, where there is a fight. So you have to forget your entire tradition, believe in a wishy-washy thing which was created in last 50, 60 years, when we turned our sense of defeat into something morally, intellectually defensible to our own. It was an ego defense mechanism. A defeated society, defeated civilization, for some times it shields itself from the fact that it is defeated by these things that, it's not good to fight. So now the time has come for us to recognize ideological shatrus. When I talk and I make it clear in my book, I'm not talking of people, of individuals. Sitaramji said that if you do not fight at the level of ideas, you have to fight in the streets. And so you have to take the fight ideologically. So those ideas, and just to sum up in the first volley of these questions, who is a Shatru? I will try to enunciate in just a few, one or two principles. A civilization which has a practice to accompany the truth statements that it is making. For example, there is something written in the Vedas. Vedas claim something. Our Upanishads claim something. They state something. Now, what is the accompanying practice to prove and test that truth? Is there an accompanying practice or not? So, in Bharatvarsh, in Sanatan Dharma, meditation, dhyana, yoga is the way in which you can test the knowledge that is given in the Vedas and the Upanishads. However, if you read the texts like the Bible and the Quran, there is absolutely no way you can test them. You have to believe in them. The Bible and the Quran, not Quran, yeah. The Bible and the Quran, if you read them, there is no way to test them. It's a belief system. You have to believe it without any means of testing it. So civilization which gives you a means of testing the truth statements that it is given in your text, that is claimed by its wise man, it's a dharmic civilization. And those ideologies which claim that it cannot be proven and you have to believe it as it is, because that will necessarily create violence. If I am saying I am right and there is no way to prove it, in order for you to come over to my side, there is no other way. If you don't agree, I'll have to commit violence for you to come over to my side. So that creates all the trouble in the world. That is those ideologies which generate with this, which are dogmatic and which have no means of proving the truth. Those ideologies are Shatru, those ideologies are the enemy. So, and that is what I would like to say in this. Thank you.
Namaskar to all of you. Whether we conquered, so whether we conquered or not conquered, whether we were passive or a very active, dynamic civilization, this is the question. Now it's up to us to accept whether our narrative is really strong or we are apologetic. Now the question comes, India never conquered. If this is the question, this has been injected into the minds of Indians by the colonial, post-colonial. It's a construct, you can say. But if you look at our civilizational story, it has always been that dynamic, forceful civilization or martial civilization, you can say, not a passive civilization. Otherwise, we would not have celebrated the hero warriors. We would not have this concept of Chakravarti, Digvijayi. We would not have Ashwamedha Yajna. But it has been forcefully injected into our young minds that we were always passive. Going ahead, we will be discussing more about the passivity of or the dynamic aspect of our civilization. So with these words, I will just, I shared my own idea of how it is a colonial and post-colonial construct and it has not been there in our civilizational ethos.
Wonderfully opened. And in fact, I want to quote the incident from the Mahabharata where Yudhishthira gets this desire. Of all the people, Yudhishthira gets this prompt from Narada. So Narada has gone to, he roams around Swarga, Antariksha, Bhumi, and even, the nether worlds. So Yudhishthira asks him, you might have met our father, Pandu. So how is he? Narada says, yes, he's happy. He is in the Swarga. He was a great king, so he is in Swarga. But he told me something. And he met. What did he tell you? So, your father Pandu met Harishchandra in Swarga. And in today's parlance, your father was given the silver room and Harishchandra has given the presidential suite in that 5-star hotel called Swarga. The kind of services that Harishchandra commands and the kind of riches and pleasures that he has. Your father says, he asked, why am I not entitled to these kind of, pleasures, right? I have been a conqueror. I have been a just king. I might not have had a very long rule, but whatever I have done for Dharma. So what is the difference between Harishchandra and me? And then Indra told me, Harishchandra performed the Rajasuya Yajna. So you died without performing the Rajasuya. So if your descendants, if your sons, grandsons, whoever, if they perform a successful Rajasuya Yajna, you will get these privileges. Which is why Yudhishthira wants to perform a Rajasuya Yajna, and it's beautiful because here you are not doing it for self, but you are doing it for your ancestors. right? And you are doing it for your progeny. So here that brings me to the definition of self, Swayam. Is it the individual, Vyashti? Is it the Samishti? Or is it timeless? So shall we dwell on the concept of how do we evaluate the self? Forget about the enemy. Before defining what is the enemy, we need to define our own self, what we stand for.
You should start this because you'll start at the individual level. I will go a little beyond that. Okay. So I am a lifelong student of the Arthashastra, and I would like to definitely explain understanding yourself, not at the level of self, but go beyond to family, community, and finally the nation. So I will be speaking from the point of view of
the concept of self is never so narrow in the Indian this one.
So
when I think for myself,
actually,
it is for the...
It becomes the entire universe. But of that universe, I will take the unit of the kingdom and the unit of the state, the nation, of which the leader is said to be the Vijigishu. What is the Vijigishu? That is the world conqueror. So there you have it, conquering again. But how do you understand this state? This state has that famous theory, the Saptanga state, the 7 Prakritis, with most people must be very familiar with. You have the king, that's the Swami, Amatya, Janpad, Kosh, Dand, Mitra. And these 7 Prakritis make up, these are the elements of the state. By analyzing each of these Prakritis, and in the Arthashastra, in
Sumita ji, maybe you want to tell the meaning of each word. So, Saptanga is very important.
Okay. So, Swami is the king. He is the first amongst equals. He is not identified with the state. That is a crucial difference between sovereignty in the Western sense and how we understand the power of the king. He is the first amongst equals, but he is not the state. The state has 7 elements. The second is Amatya, or administration, which means all the ministers, the bureaucrats, today's bureaucrats and ministries and cabinets, etc. And we had them during the Mauryan period also. Not just from the Arthashastra, but triangulated from the so-called Ashokan edicts, which I would like to call the Mauryan edicts. It's triangulated from there. So you have administration. The third is Janpad. Janpad is the land and the people. So it includes both history, geography, culture, society, people, everything. That's Janpad. Then you have the, after that you have the Dand, Kosh, Mitra and Durg. Yes, Durg has become a little less important for us today, so I think that's why it slipped out of my mind. We don't have forts like that today, but I would take it to mean, a symbol of security, symbol of internal and external security. Defense fortifications, and nowadays with technology, when you have fortifications in the sky, so it's you have to really change the concept of Durg. And of course you have Kosh, which is the treasury, Kosho, Mula, Danda. I come from the income tax department. That is our absolute motto, that it's money which makes the world go round. And then you have Dand, which is the army. And there you go again. If we were a state with ahimsa, ideas of not fighting, why would we have an important Prakriti called Dand? There would have been no reason for it. And in fact, Niti Shastra is often called also as Dandaniti, as Sai Swarupa and I were discussing in the morning when we were talking about this. And the last is Mitra. Mitra is international relations, your relations with everyone who is around you. Now these 7 Prakritis, if you understand these, if you analyze these, you can get a kind of index of power. Today it is done after people like Hans Morgenthau, or you look at the CIA power index. But what are the elements of these indexes? These elements are the same from these 7 Prakritis. So what Kautilya has done is given us tools to define, analyze all these 7 Prakritis and come up with your own SWOT analysis. This is not some kind of blind thing that we're the greatest in the world. It is a SWOT analysis of yourself as well as your enemy. So you recognize yourself, then you recognize your enemy. That enemy is the Ari. there is also a very good definition of who and what the Ari is. Who is a good Ari, who is a bad Ari. And there is also a good definition of yuddha, of fight. Why do you fight? Why do you not fight? What are the reasons? What kind of... and remember, yuddha is the best yuddha is dharma yuddha. You can have yuddha due to greed or some other reasons, but the best yuddha is dharma yuddha. The point here is that at the level of that unit which is called the state or the nation, which is an inescapable, essential part of the world order, either in the past or in the present, we have tools, we have manuals to recognize the strengths, weaknesses and characteristics of our own kingdom, of those who are opposed to us. And those who are opposed to us also opposed in two ways. You know, the aim of the kingdom and the Vijigishu is Palan and Labh. So if any state is harming your Palan, that is the Yogakshema of the people, or Labh, that is the prosperity and future prosperity of your people, and if it is attacking the dharma of your nation, then it is yuddha all the way. But it has to be considered very, very carefully. Now, this is a long topic. I don't want to go on and on myself, so I will pass it on to.
Thank you. Thank you, Sumitaji, for giving that clarity from the Shastras. In my book, I make it absolutely clear I'm not talking of Atmabodh, about the self, because simply it's beyond my capacity to talk about that. So I'm not talking about that. When I say Swayambodh, it's the sense of Hindu society, how Hindu society sees itself. Because in the journey of every civilization, there come many times when they have to think on it. Because an incident triggered this in my mind, that we have to define once again that who we are very clearly. There was a video by Manoj Muntashir, a few years ago, where he said, agar aap ye bhi nahi hai, to bhi Hindu. If you're not this, then you're Hindu. If you're not this, then you're Hindu. So then it was basically a non-definition, that you are a Hindu, kuch bhi nahi ho to aap Hindu ho. You are nothing to, then you are Hindu. You are everything, then you are Hindu. So I thought that this cannot be the definition. There has to be, if not a definition in the sense that, certain other religions can define themselves, because we are a practice-based civilization, so it has to be more nuanced. But there has to be some ways to tell that you are apart, you are different from others. So what are those ways? I try to define some universals, because someone in Kashmir, if he says he's a Hindu, someone in Tamil Nadu, if he says he's a Hindu, there has to be something common between them. If there is nothing common between them, then at least one of them is not Hindu. So what is that sense of being Hindu is what you try to define. In 30 seconds, if you say, I learned it all from my guru, and the first part, Swayambodh, is all, even the Hindu society and its sense of itself is taken from him only. That the concepts of karma, prarabdha and punarjan, which are very central to us, all Hindu cosmology cannot exist without this. So the sense of karma, prarabdha, punarjan, the practice of meditation, yoga, dhyana, which are given in a text and which have been practiced all over. The concept of panchirana, that by the act of being born, there are certain rinas, debts, for the want of a better word, on us, and that decides the kartavya bodh of a Hindu, that how should the Hindu, duties of Hindu shall be defined based on the rinas that are on him. Those are Pancharinas, Devrina, Rishirina, Pitrarin, Narrin, Bhutrin. There are different enunciations. But this, in essence, the centrality of Vedas, not that we have to blindly believe in them, but this is the civilization. What is the marga? There are many desas, and we have always respected them. One of the greatest things of this land, Bharatvarsha, all over, if you go to any civilization, there is this constant conflict between classical and vernacular, between the centralizing force and the cessationist forces. And one oppresses the others. We are the only civilization where actually the marga has nourished desas, various desas, without destroying their individuality, their diversity. They have nourished them and connected them to the marga. So that marga is given in the Vedas and the central scriptures. So that respect of that, this constitutes basic template. And apart from that, there are so many differences which we have always, diversity, which we have always appreciated. But my guru used to say, and at that time I thought that it's just a spin of words, that we are very fond of saying, unity in diversity. So he said it should be opposite. It should be diversity in unity. Why? Because unity is most fundamental to us. We come from the civilization which gave the concept of Advait. Unity is fundamental, it's basic, it's original, diversity is emergent. And it is that unity, that sense of spiritual unity, highest unity, which informs all diversity, so that they do not fight against each other and nourish each other. That is, in essence, it was not 30 seconds, I'm sorry, 2 minutes of what the Hindu society is. Thank you.
In this world of binaries or dvandvas, there has been no time when one, it's free from shatrus. The existence of both negative and positive, shatru and mitra, will always be there. Now the question is, when you have binaries, so there has always been, and it's bound to be, one set of binaries will be privileged, the other set will be suppressed. So sometimes the shatru will rise, sometimes the mitra will be subdued by the shatru. Now here the Brahma Vidya comes to our rescue. How to handle this situation when we are a part of, an integral part of this dvandvatmaka jagat. One can never, whether, in the matter of oneself, or one is dealing with the outer world. The shatrus and mitras, so both will always be existent. Now the Upanishad says, it's a very beautiful sentence which says, Swarat Samrat Bhavati. How a king is defined is that a Samrat, the one who wants to rule over the world, first he has to be Swarat. He has to conquer himself. Without conquering the self, one can never rule over others. Atma Jnanam, Atmanam Vidhi, Atma va are drashtavya, shrotavya, mantavya, nididhyasitavya. This is fundamental to our Sanatana Dharma, our civilization. I will explain that one has to see oneself. Hear the voice of the truth from within. Shrotavya, mantavya, think about it, contemplate on it, be meditated upon it. Nididhyasitavya. So unless and until one conquers oneself, because the enemies are both within and without. The inner enemies have to be conquered. Without conquering the inner enemies, the outer enemies can never be conquered. So this is the Brahma Vidya. That is why it gave focus, it gave always, stress on the Swayambodha. Swayambodha has the meanings at different levels, you can say, but essentially, so what the Shastras have done, who is Shatru, to define that, it says, say for example, you go to Bhagavad Gita, the Daivasura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga. So it clearly defines what we are essentially. He says, Krishna says to Arjuna, that you are born to Daivi Sampad. This is your essential character. Then it says what goes against it is the Asuri Bhava, the Shatru Bhava. So unless and until we know ourselves, our essential nature, it is even difficult to understand the Shatru, control the Shatru, or conquer the Shatru. So this is where comes the importance of knowing oneself, becoming the Swarat before one becomes the Samrat.
Wonderfully elucidated. So that actually defines how the king should be, right? And as long as the king is not selfish, the ruler is not selfish, the leader is not selfish, we can trust him, to take the country, the society with him, right? And that just reminds me of this shloka, when we are defining ourselves. The diversity element is beautifully explained in Vishnu Purana when, the Purana describes India as the land to the south of Himalayas and to the north of the sea. And there are so many rivers, so many kingdoms. So the diversity is described there. But why are all the citizens of so many kingdoms called as Bharatiya? What is the commonality? So this shloka says tapastapyanti munayoh. Along this so many civilizations and so many kingdoms, this land, the munis do tapasya. Juhyate chapi yajjinaha. The yajnas are performed by people who can afford them, people who can visualize them. The yajna. A yajna is something which is done as a, not for a selfish purpose. Basically, it is the, you do a tyaga of your punya karma for a greater purpose. That is a yajna. The Lit Fest also is a yajna because it brings together so many thoughts. And even those who cannot do yajna, danani chatra diyante, people give dana, paralokarthamadarat. Right? For the paraloka, for the loka which is beyond what we can see, these three things people do across the land. Right? And now that gives us some kind of a swayam bodha. And and so in this dynamic, how do we define a shatru? Especially in the recent connotation where who we thought will be our ally overnight turned hostile.
So, I will again go back to Cautillian thought because that is where I normally focus. In Cautillian thought, defining the Ari has been done not only in the book on Prakritis, which I just explained to you, but there is a section on Mitra. There is a section on how to relate with all the people, all the nations around you, and you must have heard of the famous Mandal theory. So the Mandal theory says, Kautilya says that the whole world is divided into different mandals. So there is you, that is the Vijigishu, remember, the world conqueror. And then there is the Ari, that is your enemy. And then you have the Madhyam and the Udasin, who are also two very strong, powerful conglomerates. Now all these categories are not single nations, they are conglomerates. The Ari is a group of people who are not your allies. Now in the context of what Sai Swarupa just said, of today's very quickly shifting sands, the Mandal theory provides us a very good mapping of understanding the international relations and who are the kingdoms, who are the nations today, nation states which become our enemies and our friends. So the Mandal theory can map this out. The advantage is that it gives you groups, it also gives you individuals. So if you are looking at China, then China's relationship with the USA, China's relationship with Russia will also be included in this Mandal system. So from the point of view of nation states, to recognize that those nations which are harming the welfare of your country, remember the Palan and the Lav that I spoke of, if anybody is harming the Palan of the constituents of all the 7 Prakritis, especially the Janpad, they are your enemy. And if they are not letting you prosper, they are your enemy. And there are so many ways in which you can actually deal with them. I think maybe you will have a question on that later, right? But I will just quickly say that he has many methods of dealing with them. Outright war is one of them, but there are many other methods which are before that, which are encapsulated in the 4 upayas and the Shadgunyam. Maybe we'll get a chance to discuss that. Okay, so the 4 upayas are some of the oldest ways of negotiating and understanding the conflict between people and finishing or making some kind of harmonious conclusion to that. Sam, that is in effect, trying to conciliate people. There are 5 types of Sam and 5 subtypes of each 5 of these, so it's huge. The main focus of the Arthashastra is on Sam. Although we have this in many of the other Purans, and they have been explained in certain different ways, and our Dharma Gurus have also said that these are ways in which individuals can get over their conflicts with their own enemies. So, perhaps when we have the Shatru Bo, then we have a Shatru, we can try Sam. The other is Dan, which is, bribery, let me put it that way. And then you have Bhed, And then you have dand. Bhed is using of confusing tactics, confusing people, maybe using a little bit of deceit and throwing them off balance so that you can push your own view. And dand, of course, is using force. That is what the subject of this is all about. Shadgunyam is something developed by Kautilya, especially separately, because the 4 upayas come from a very old Hori tradition. Shadgunyam is specially developed in the Arthashastra for relations with other countries, and over there you have something called Sandhi, which is friendly relations, Vigraha, which is hostility, Asan, which is quiet, neither here nor there, it is a kind of loaded indifference. Then you have Yan, which is actually war, and then you have something which is called Dvaidi Bhav. Dvaidi Bhav is the most interesting one, where you can use 2 of these together to confuse your opponent. So all these are ways in which today I think Hindu society can actually use these methods to deal with people who are inimical to our civilization and our way of thinking.
Thank you. I will go on what the other kinds of enemies are, because in my book I have focused on the ideological enemies that you do not face them only outside our borders or at the borders, which you also face within the borders. So there is a famous incident which Sitaram Goyalji, one of the greatest historians and thinkers of last century from the Hindu side, he based his book, he wrote a book in Hindi, Saptashil, in which he starts from an incident from the life of Buddha. Now, when we think of Buddha, we all only think of, we have been made to think only of ahimsa and all. But here what happens is that a general in which Buddha is sitting and meditating, in the land in which he is sitting and meditating, the general of that land comes to him and says, look, oh great one, I have been trying to conquer the neighboring kingdom for last 10 years or so, but I have been unable. So can you tell me how to do that? So Buddha asked 7 questions to him. So does that society follow this Shila, that's it? Do they respect women? Do they respect temples? Do they respect rishis? And when he answers in affirmative to all of them, he says that you cannot conquer that society until they maintain these Shilas. So what you have to do is to send your spies in that kingdom, send ideas, corrupt them at the level of ideas, so that when they are corrupted from within, then it is easy to conquer them. So that is what has happened with us, because Sitaramji once again wrote a wonderful book around 42 years ago, Hindu Society Under Siege, in which he starts saying that Hindus are not aware that they are under siege. The thing is that I have seen this movement move forward 23 years ago when my guru put me on this path. Till here, there is a great progress. You know, right now we have LitFest where we can talk about these things. At that time, if you were to shout at the top of your voice in your city, people will call you Pagal and nobody will pay attention. So we have come a long way. Yeah. They did. Yes. So that was the stage, and now we have come where we can talk about these things. But the thing is still enough number of Hindus do not realize that they are under siege, because the enemy at the level of ideas is a very different enemy. What we are used to traditionally, that's why I say that Swayambodh is not enough. Because when you encounter an enemy which you never have before, so lest it becomes controversial, but it could be. For example, in COVID, what happened, when a new virus comes, there is no defense in your society. Everyone falls sick. And most of the people fall sick. But over the time, you study them, you study those strains, and then you develop defense and also vaccines. Vaccines and internal defense mechanisms. So both for natural and cultural vaccines to evolve, it needs some time, it needs some study. That is why specifically studying Shatru is very important. These ideas which actually invaded our civilization corrupted many minds, where what we know as religion, it was weaponized. Politics weaponized religion, turned it against us. So we need to know what those ideas are. Ideas which believe in, because I start my book with one idea and I will end it there also, that I was going in Vidisha to a temple and my driver was there. Now there was a huge rally in Vidisha, and mind you, MP is not known for its minorities. And there was a huge rally of Muslims. They were protesting for something which had happened in Palestine. So my driver asked a very pertinent question. How were they able to unite across national, international boundaries? And why are we divided on the issues of land, language, and all of that? So what is that idea? We need to study that. And in my book I will not elaborate it here. That what are those ideas which makes them united across all borders of land, language, ideas, which we need to study. Only then we will be able to make a difference. Thank you.
So Pankajji's book, I guess, is available outside. Yes, will be. Okay. So the static and dynamic nature of the enemy, right? We have discussed the external, we have discussed the internal, but enemy may turn friend, friend may turn enemy, and something about that, Sampadanand.
So the best way of explaining the static and dynamic aspect, we know the Sankhya Darshana, the Purusha and the Prakriti, the static and the dynamic. So there has been nothing like always static or always dynamic. So there has to be the static element as the force behind to support, and the Prakriti has to continue with the action, the dynamic action. There's a beautiful verse in the Gita which says, Karmani akarma yah paschet, akarmani cha karma yah. Seeing action in inaction and inaction in action, this action you translate as Prakriti and inaction into Purusha, then you can understand the verse in a better manner. And who is our enemy and who is our friend? Gita has a clear answer. Atmeva bandhuratmana. Atmeva ripuratmana. You yourself are your enemy. You yourself are your friend. What is the solution? Uddhared atmanatmanam. And it says, deliver yourself by yourself. And how this dynamic aspect of Prakriti in the context today we are talking or today we are facing, or the civilization has been facing. So I put it into the fourfold force, the Atma Bala, Buddhi Bala, Sarira or Sainya Bala, and Artha Bala. These four forces together, they keep our civilization dynamic. And we always have actualized and then put into force every aspect of it. Not one of these. Atma Bala, Buddhi Bala, Sainya Bala or Sharira Bala, and the Artha Bala. So when these four we concentrate together, these four forces are active and dynamic always, then the civilization moves forward, rooted within its own values. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful discussion. I think each topic warrants a lecture, but we are unfortunately running out of time. And
No, we will not be having questions. Yes. We will now have book launches of both Shri Pankaj Saxena ji's book as well as Dr. Sampanathan Mishra ji's books. Yes, we request Pujya Swami Vigyananda ji to please come on stage and release Shri Pankaj Saxena ji's books.